This is the Slots and Sockets podcast, episode number 64. I am one of your hosts, IRD Moose, and my partner in crime,
Penguin Turbo.
Penguin Turbo. You're getting it.
I'm backwards.
I'm backwards today.
I'm going to be backwards today.
Happy backwards Monday. Would that be Yadnom?
Sure.
Okay, we'll go with that. Yadnom. Happy Yadnom, Turbo. So,
it's the summertime. You know what that means, right, Moose?
I'm sweating in places I shouldn't be sweating.
Yeah, that too. Well, it just means that things in the techie world don't tend to be very forthcoming.
No, they kind of slow up a little bit this
time. They slow down quite a bit because people are spending things on other non-techie things like, you know, vacations and summer plans and concerts, and typically speaking, they're doing things other than sitting in their room with a hot gaming computer, you know, playing and being social.
Right.
And as such, there's just not a ton of news.
Nope. Kind of like right before CES, things tend to dry up.
Yep. So, you know, we know 9060 XT is coming out. And we've got some leaked, I would say, roughly well-placed leaks. I wouldn't put AMD past of them saying, if you were to leak some of these slides, no one would complain.
We wouldn't be too upset for the free advertising. Yeah,
exactly. So this is obviously before we have official reviews, but this is from a reputable source. And 9060 is XT with a 16 gig is on par with really kind of around the 3070 Ti, the 5060 Ti, a little bit slower than the 4070, but you know, not hugely. And the quoted question is it 1440p? This is looking like a very interesting card. Now, the real question I would say is how does this going to do comparative to some of these 8 or 12 gig cards when you have higher resolution? Will that 4 extra gigs really make a difference between when this goes up against a 4070? Or, you know, is the RAM, you know, the VRAM really just there just to have a number? You know, follow-up question is, we know that there's a 9068 gig. I'm going to be very interested to see if we see any reviews on the 8 gig. I doubt it. They'll probably do the same thing that NVIDIA did. But I'll say this, the 9060 XT does, you know, beat handily the 5060 8 gig. So
right.
What I'll say is that obviously wait, but if you're in this price point, this looks like a very good card. And you know, it's almost the same, very comparable to the 5060 Ti. The averages are a little bit lower, but the lows are higher. And that's one of the things we've really seen with the 9000 series is the averages are good, but where you really need to look and pay attention is the lows. Like, so for instance, in the leak, the 5060 Ti low is 102 and the average is 142, whereas the 9060, the low is 110 and the average is 134. It is on average going to perform more consistent because it has a smaller, tighter gap. And we see this the same with the 9670 and the 9070 XT. And a lot of the reviewers in those 9000 series launches have made comments that the card is ridiculously smooth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's because we're seeing a lot less changes or jumps or variations between your lows and your highs. It tends to be more like this, whereas the NVIDIA cards are going to see more ups and downs. Um, and anytime you start seeing a dramatic change in your frame rate, your eyes will be able to pick up some of that. And I think that might be where we're seeing some of those comments. I will say that in my 9070 XT, I find that it is a very solid performer.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very happy with mine. Um, so that is it. Plus, the other half is that even compared to like a 7900 XTX, which was my prior card, you do see an improvement of that variation.
Yeah.
9060 XT. If you want, well, let me rephrase that. The 16 gig version is going to launch at 349. There will be overclocked models, but there will be MSRP models. If you want an MSRP model, I think that this is probably the card that will see MSRP and stay MSRP. Um, and I think we'll have more traditional card availability than we have in the past. I also, and we've said this before, I do believe the GPU market is softening. So I don't think you necessarily need to be at your local micro center waiting in line to get an MSRP card of this. And I would say that this is probably the first one I would say that if the overclocking ability of the overclocked cards does give meaningful power bumps,
Mm-hmm.
the 9060 could be a really interesting card because if you can overclock it. Now we know that the clocks on the 9060 are higher than the 9070, both of them. The thing is that most of them are going to have a single 8-pin, but I expect that we'll have some overclocked models that will have dual 8 pins.
Yep.
Nobody is using 12-volt high power. I think it's probably a licensing and a power issue that they never even get close to using it. So it's nobody is doing the 2x6. With an overclock, the question is, could this encroach or get close to a 9070? I don't think so, because this is the 9670 does have like a 50% FPS bump on it, but I still think the 9060 XT has the ability to close that gap. We're looking at a 110 low to 150. I don't think you're going to get 41 frames with overclock on that. It just seems awfully high.
Mm-hmm.
But time will tell. I mean, this is still on a card. The 9070 has not been an amazing overclocker. It's been a very good card, just not an amazing overclocker. A cut down version, which is the 9060, could do well. So I don't know. Wait for reviews. If you really want that 9070 performance, then just go buy a 9070. Those are pretty easy to find. Yep. And the honest truth is, I mean, I haven't looked for a while, but I'm fairly certain you could just go buy pretty much anything right now. I mean, my local micro center had 5090s in stock, albeit well above $3,000. So yeah, I mean, my local micro center has, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different models of 5090s in stock.
Yep.
And from anywhere from 3,500 down to the low is $2,999. So um, it seems like the I can't buy a video card is a thing of the past.
Yep.
Um,
Especially
and
if you're within a reasonable drive of a Micro Center, which technically I am now because Santa Clara just opened this weekend.
oh yes,
So I
um,
have not gone yet, but I shall. I will make the pilgrimage eventually. But
I mean, the other half I would say is I can buy from Amazon a
mhm.
5090 in stock. An MSI for 32. Here's a
Ugh.
gigabyte for 3175. The Astral's in stock at 4,000.
Don't spend over $3,000 on $1,000 graphics card, people. Don't
But
do
the
that.
notion is you can find, and these are sold from Amazon direct.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think the notion of you have to um you know you can't buy cards is no more.
Yeah.
Um
It
I
just
think
took
that
4 months.
it did take way too long, and I think part of the reason that it's that they're still on still there is because they're still $1,000 over what Nvidia said that they should be selling for.
Mm-hmm.
So at 29.19, that's still $1,000 over. That's you're paying 50% more than what Nvidia says you should be paying.
Mm-hmm.
So um I think what we're probably seeing is that people have drawn the line. The enthusiasts have jumped into the market, bought the really expensive cards. Um, the other half, I would say, and I mean this, savvy buyers should be looking at used in certain instances because I do believe a number of these cards are not moving on the used marketplace.
Right.
And the fact that I can go buy a card at my Micro Center or from Amazon gives a lot more leverage for buyers. And you should absolutely use that to your advantage.
Definitely. Especially because you're not getting a warranty in most cases. I think XFX still lets you do the transferable warranties. And so you're losing out on that potential avenue of support if the card craps out on you. It's also, you don't know what the previous owner's done to it. So it might have been used and abused in a mining scenario or any number of things. So, I definitely take a look at the used market because every region is going to be different. I mean, my area is going to be different from what Turbo sees up in the Colorado area. And, if you're in Florida or New York City, who knows what you could find on Marketplace. Because you might find somebody who's desperate to offload a 4090 because they want to go to AMD for whatever reason. And, you might be able to get a screaming deal on one. You
Yeah,
never know without looking.
just be aware. I mean, heck, I mean, I'm starting to see even some stuff like here's a 5080 gigabyte white um on the on Facebook Marketplace for me for $1,400. Now that still shouldn't be a $1,400 card.
No.
But I'm gonna guess at $1,400, I wouldn't be in the realm of buying that because I think that that's I just don't see the value of that considering you're gonna go buy an MSI for $1,450 and get a warranty. And if you have it, if you don't have full ROPS, you have a case to do that. The other half, I would sit there and say, we don't know if these ROPS are just from a manufacturing error. It will be interesting to see in 5 months if we start seeing people say, well, I don't have as many ROPS as I did when I bought the card.
Mm-hmm.
I bought the card and now I've got fewer ROPS. So I don't know. I don't know if that's necessarily a concern because if it was, I'm sure there would probably be more talk, but we really won't know until we see some of that. But just be aware. Look at those. Look at the reviews, the independent reviews on the 9060. I do
Yeah,
think that's going to be a strong card. I think it's probably going to be stronger than a 5060 Ti.
I think so too. Yeah, just kind of looking at some of the stuff that's leaked about it.
I
I
think
think I think it's
it's
gonna. I think it's well positioned for the rumored price of upwards of 349 for the
yeah, a
16 gig model. I
349 to
think that's a good
16 gig
price.
is a good price. It slots in well. Yeah, it's definitely going to be faster than a 5060 Ti. So, um, and the 5060 Ti, in all honesty, given even with all the bad stuff around that card, because the 16 gigs cards start at 480. 340 is going to be a really good point because you're going to be $150 cheaper,
Hmm.
um, and still get 16 gigs and still get some ray tracing bumps. So I do believe that's probably fairly priced, um, considering that you're going to get what it is. I mean, a 5060 is going to be in the same. This is faster 5060. Its price is a 5060. It's just that you're going to get a 5060 Ti performance. So,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
speaking of video cards, the only other thing that I had on the radar was um 5090s that went through Micro Center. Apparently, Micro Center had somebody return it that they didn't get their 5090 graphics card in the Zotac box, but instead got backpacks.
Were they at least
And
Zotac backpacks? I
nope, they
mean,
weren't even Zotac backpacks.
wow.
But then it gets better. That and Micro Center did the right thing. They looked into it, looked at the shipment, and lo and behold, 31 5090s did not have graphics cards, but had backpacks. So now the thing is that
Hmm.
these were, from what I understand, sealed units.
So that
So
means they would have had to
they were
be swapped
swapped
at the factory
at the factory, or
packaging.
someone
Yeah.
did a very, very good job at repackaging them without anyone knowing. Now, I will say this. I have, when I bought my 9070 XT, I was surprised at how much or how unsealed that card really was.
Hmm.
So someone might have been taking advantage of the fact that maybe these weren't super duper sealed,
Possibly.
like some other things, but I do not know. Um, well, I just have to see. I think it's probably smart if you're buying a $3,000 video card to video you opening it in case you get backpacks instead of video cards.
Right.
Um, I don't think you're going to see this level of swapping um, really anywhere else. So I don't know if this is a 5080 or any other video card problem. It's probably just a 5090.
It's probably just
So
that one shipment too that's the
it's
problem. Or
probably that one shipment. But I mean, you
yeah.
think about that, 31 video cards
Hmm.
times 1500, well, times 3000
Yeah,
is
3,000,
not a
3,500.
small amount of theft. That's
Yeah.
45,000 on the retail side. Now, and I'm going to guess if these were stolen in Southeast Asia or in China, those cards may actually fetch a higher premium because they get the 5090D. The other half is, China has not been getting supply of the 5090D. In fact,
Yep.
a month ago, um, Nvidia had prepared partners that they were going to get less or none of the 5090D. Um, and then there was also rumor that there was going to be a cutback where the 5090D didn't get the full 32 gigs. Now, we haven't seen the 24 variant of the 5090D. Um, but it was to a point where Nvidia actually had tested a 5090D with 24, and partners had it in hand and were doing some testing on it. And we even had some part numbers listed on websites with the 24 gig reference.
Mhm.
So I do believe the 5090D 24 gig is legitimate. Um, the question is, what does that look like? But it's my understanding in China that the 5090s have become, whether a D or a non-D, have become wildly sought after because they haven't been getting them.
Yep.
And then in Europe, the 5090s just don't. In fact, video cards, from what I understand, in Europe just don't sell. They're way overpriced, and people just they just collect dust.
Yeah, they're dropping toward MSRP pretty regularly, it
Even
sounds like.
below MSRP in some.
Yeah.
Now, I will say there are cards that are not worth MSRP.
No.
The
True.
5070 is not worth MSRP. Um,
I mean, I would
as
argue that
much
none
as
of the founders editions are worth the MSRP they're asking, but you know,
yeah, I mean,
that's just an ingredient thing in general.
I would even go as far as to say, I mean, realistically speaking, if you look at the 50 series, I get that some people are going to find some value in the 90 series. Um, I get it, but the 80 50 80, if the 80 is at MSRP, then if I could pay a 5080 at MSRP at $1,000, I feel much better about that card. But at the
Mhm.
$1,400 plus, that's the cheapest. It
No,
is absolutely not worth that.
no.
The 5070 is just no.
I
And I
could
would say
see.
the 5070 Ti, even though it sells really well, I think it's
Mhm.
because it's at that price point of $1,000, even though it should be 749.
Yeah.
Um,
Or
and that's,
749 for FE and 799 for the partner models. Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, that's
Um and this, I feel the same way about the 5090 as well. Like if it were 15, if they were asking 1500 for the founders edition, I think that would be a lot more reasonable, even if overpriced. But I'm still sticking to my guns that it's not worth more than $1,000 for a founders edition 5090 to me.
I would say
Even though
that,
the engineering is freaking cool as heck. I mean, the stuff they did around it, with the exception of the power connector, is pretty friggin' cool. But
yeah.
you know, it's
I,
still not worth more than $1,000 to me.
I mean, I'll say this. I mean, if you looked at the 4080 Super and you look at the 5080, and if you're in the $1,000 price point, and let's say, for somebody who's in that $1,000 price point, for $1,000 at MSRP, the 5080 isn't bad. Now, with that being said, if we're comparing apples to apples, one would argue very quickly that if 9070 XT is fairly close to what the 5080 is,
Mm-hmm.
um, and if I can get that at MSRP, that's a surprisingly good deal for 93% of a 5080
Yep.
for half the cost. So I get it. Um,
Well, what was it? A quarter, 2/3 the cost, but yeah.
well, it should be 599.
No, the 9070 XT, I thought it was 749 was MSRP.
No, 599.
Did I forget? Did I already slip on that? Wow. Okay. I will trust you because you're more of a numbers guy than me. I do all my numbers in spreadsheets
599.
for
X it's
XT.
599,
Okay.
and the
Then I
9070
was
non
dumb.
XT was 549.
And there I demonstrate my infinite capacity for being dumb once again.
I mean,
So,
the other
but
thing
yeah.
is that you look at value. The 9070 is not a good value. The 9070 will need to be moved down to get some sales.
Mhm.
I think the 9070 is probably going to be a card that probably either doesn't have a really long shelf life, because it's the same chip.
Yeah.
Um, with from what I understand, um, the yields don't make them save them any money because they're just getting all of the yields that work for both of them. So my guess is that they're just gimping these just to put them in a box and save $50.
Yep.
Um, it's probably going to get to a point where I don't know. I mean, I think if we look at the rumor mill of what's coming, I do think we could see a 9000 series ultimate, like a really beefed up, although it could come across on the workstation side. Um, but I also think that, in fact, we know NVIDIA has the 5080 Super that they have ready if they feel threatened.
Mm.
And that'll be a 5080 because it'll be the same core, but it's going to have more more VRAM.
Yeah.
And probably higher clocks because it's going to use more power.
Well, considering how fast AMD is selling cards compared to Nvidia, not just because they can get stock in place, but they're apparently still selling, well, by far outselling Nvidia, even with stuff starting to collect dust on shelves. Well, not collect dust, but actually spend some time on shelves. Um, I would be very surprised if Nvidia doesn't already feel threatened, and rightly so, because they're overcharging for their cards. And I think that's going to be AMD's foot in the door for UDNA if they can keep the pressure on Nvidia for the next year and a half while we wait for them to announce and then launch the next series of Ryzen, or not Ryzen, but Radeon cards. I mean, even the next series of Ryzen, because that's the thing is, like, you can build a complete AMD system. You can't build a complete NVIDIA system. You've either got to go with AMD or Intel for your CPU for right now. Now, it may change in the future, but I don't see NVIDIA getting into the consumer CPU market. And I really like I kind of have a strong feeling that Nvidia may end up eventually getting out of the consumer GPU market, just because they make a heck of a lot more profit on the commercial side, on the server cards and the AI processing, and doing all the fancy blade stuff and stuff that if I could get my hands on, I would be a very, very happy moose. But you
I
know,
mean, it's an interesting thought. It'll be interesting to see kind of how, because it's my understanding a lot of the silicon space and reservations that NVIDIA has, and I would say probably similar to AMD, has been going towards the business side, the
sure.
AI.
Yeah.
Um, I believe with the market, I think that there's been some softening on that where we've seen more cards, but I don't think that they've realized that there's been a softening in the market from the pricing that consumers are ended up seeing.
Yeah.
Eventually, someone is going to have to start doing some rebates to get these cards selling. Um, AMD is the better spot because naturally their pricing is lower. Um, and I still think that Nvidia is going to, you know, be slow to respond because I think they're going to say, well, our stuff is worth more. It's not.
No.
In fact, I would make the argument it's, with the crappy graphics that we've dealt with, it's worth less. All they're doing is just destroying their own brand.
Yep.
We'll see. Time will tell. I mean, if you're in the market right now as a buyer, it's good. Look for the right card. Um, I would make the argument that you should only be looking for the cards you want, and the smart play is to be finding cards that are at or fairly close to MSRP or where they should be. Um, Overclock cards aren't bad, but do not pay $300, $400, $500 over
Mm.
the stock card.
Yep.
I just don't see the value in that at all for the 2 or 3 or 4% that you might get. Even at 5%, that's not a good financial unless you're at a 50/90, I guess. But even then, I'd make the argument you're not going to win. I mean, what are you going to get?
I mean, unless you're not going to miss the money, which the vast majority of us will, just avoid it. Just
Exactly.
wait for the prices to get reasonable. So,
yep.
And on that bombshell, I think we're going to call it a show for this evening. Thank you all for watching. We appreciate you giving us a little bit of time of your time. Do remember to jump down below in the doobly-doo and drop a comment, a like, and a subscribe. And if there's anything you'd like us to see cover in a future episode, or you got any comments about my own stupidity, which I am free to admit to, go ahead and drop us a comment there. We'll love hearing from you. So until next time, thank you all for watching, and have fun storming the castle.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.